Sapiens. Chapter 1: The Rise of Sapiens. 70,000 years ago, there were at least 6 different species of human walking the earth. These humans were not particularly special. In the food chain of all organisms, they were all solidly in the middle. Then, one human species made a spectacular leap to the top, dominating most other animals, including the other humans. That species was Homo sapiens, which Harari shortens to Sapiens, the one we all belong to as modern humans. What explains this sudden jump to the top of the food chain? How else have sapiens transformed their minds and worlds over the past 70,000 years? And what could these transformations mean for the future of sapiens? Historian Yuval Noah Harari examines these and other questions in his international bestseller Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Harari begins the history of our species by examining the end of all the other humans. What happened to our genetic brothers and sisters? Beginning 2 million years ago, many kinds of humans evolved. Some were massive and others were dwarfs. Some were fearsome hunters and others meat plant gatherers. They were all human beings. These relatives of ours originated in East Africa and spread across the globe. We don't know just how many other humans existed before us and with us. What we do know is that sapiens have been alone for the last 12,000 years. There are 2 main theories for how sapiens became the last remaining human species. The first theory suggests that sapiens and other human species interbred, eventually merging into one population. If the interbreeding theory were correct, the evidence would be embedded in our DNA. The second theory, the replacement theory, is more violent. It holds that the other human species died out naturally or were killed off, sapiens replaced them. For decades, researchers favored the replacement theory. Recent evidence, however, suggests that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. In 2010, scientists compared DNA extracted from the fossils of 2 extinct human species, Neanderthals and Denisovans, to the DNA of modern humans. They found that 1 to 4% of modern Eurasians' DNA is Neanderthal, and 6% of modern Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians' DNA is Denisovan. Harari concludes that sapiens did replace previous human populations, but that a few lucky Neanderthal and Denisovan genes did hitch a ride on the Sapiens Express. Over the next millennia, sapiens would continue to conquer their environments, their biology, and even each other. In the next chapters, we'll explore some of these major triumphs and tragedies of human history. And we'll consider what our world may look like in the millennia to come. The main ideas, Chapter 1. 100,000 years ago, sapiens jumped to the top of the food chain, dominating other animal and human species. The modern human genome contains DNA from other human species. Sapiens largely replaced, but sometimes merged with, other species of humans. Chapter 2: Communication and Cooperation, 70,000 years ago. Physically, humans are not particularly intimidating. We aren't very large or muscular. We balance on only 2 legs, but inside our skulls is a brain far larger and higher powered than it needs to be for an animal our size. The modern human brain constitutes about 2 to 3% of the body's weight, but consumes 25% of its energy. In comparison, the brains of other apes only consume about 8% of their body's energy. To fuel their larger brains, ancient sapiens spent more time foraging for food than other humans had. And over time, humans diverted energy from biceps to neurons. This energy investment paid off. Between 70,000 to 30,000 years ago, sapiens underwent a cognitive revolution, a burst in intelligence, social skills, and cooperation. We don't know what sparked this revolution. The most common theory is that at some point, our jumbo brains were rewired by some lucky mutations. And this rewiring unlocked new cognitive abilities, allowing us to think and communicate in unprecedented ways. All animals communicate with each other. But sapiens' linguistic skills are unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. By mixing and matching a handful of sounds and signs, we can create an unlimited number of unique messages. A green monkey can yell to its comrades, "Careful!" A lion. But sapiens can also describe the lion and its exact location and share ideas for what to do next. Harari says this amazingly supple communication propelled the evolution of our species in 3 key ways. First, sapiens could now share knowledge and opinions about the surrounding world. This made us smarter. We could discuss plans and debate options. And we could cooperate to carry these plans out. Second, sapiens could now gossip. Today, we think of gossip as something trivial or malicious. But research suggests that gossip helped sapiens form tighter bonds and agree on social norms. And by sharing information about other people, we learned who we could trust and who we couldn't. This allowed our communities to grow. As gossip unmasked cheats and freeloaders, small bands of people could now merge with others they trusted. Third, sapiens could now tell myths and stories about intangible things like tribal spirits or abstract ideas like morality or nations. This, Harari argues, freed us from biology. Our behaviors were no longer determined by genes alone. Our actions could now be motivated by ideas and collective goals. Thus, the cognitive revolution opened a fast lane of cultural evolution, bypassing the traffic jams of genetic evolution. And by bypassing biology, Harari says, sapiens were able to make history. The main ideas, Chapter 2. 70,000 years ago, sapiens developed new ways of thinking, communication, and cooperation. Sapiens diverted energy to their high-powered brains, eventually sparking a cognitive revolution. The development of sophisticated language allowed sapiens to share information about the world and each other. Chapter 3. From foragers to farmers, 10,000 years ago. Sapiens. Until 10,000 years ago, sapiens were foragers. These ancient foragers were masters of their environments. They knew which foods to avoid, which stones made sturdy knives, and how to recognize the signs of coming storms. Their mental abilities were superb. And their constantly varying diets kept them nourished and healthy. All these benefits lead Harari to describe our foraging ancestors as the most knowledgeable and skillful people in history. Despite this, about 10,000 years ago, foragers began devoting all their time and energy to farming. This was the start of the agricultural revolution. Between 9,500–3,500 BC, starting in southeastern Turkey, western Iran, and the Levant, humans cultivated wheat, rice, peas, olive trees, goats, horses, and more. Our ancestors believed that farming would make their lives easier. But Harari calls the agricultural revolution history's biggest fraud. The average farmer lived a far more difficult life than the average forager. As farmers adopted diets that were dominated by wheat, their diets became less nutritious, and their health suffered. The dependence on wheat also kept them tied to their land, leaving them vulnerable to raids and natural disasters that could decimate their food sources. The agricultural revolution also took a toll on sapiens' bodies. Human spines, knees, necks, and arches had evolved for climbing apple trees and running after gazelles, not clearing rocks and carrying water buckets. Fossil evidence suggests that during the agricultural revolution, sapiens began suffering from arthritis, hernias, and slipped discs. Even today, we may be shorter and physically weaker than our foraging ancestors. Some evidence suggests that our brains may be smaller, too. Harari concludes, foragers seem to have enjoyed a more comfortable and rewarding lifestyle than most of the peasants, shepherds, and office clerks that followed. Why did sapiens trade comfortable lives for a more miserable existence? Harari says that the agricultural revolution was not a decision, but rather a trap. Ancient sapiens certainly chose to start sowing seeds, plucking weeds, and guiding sheep to greener fields. But agriculture took hold in small steps over thousands of years. So across generations, humans simply forgot what life had been like before. Sapiens in 3500 BC couldn't know that their foraging ancestors were more immune to disease and had healthier teeth, gums, and backs. What they did know was that farming allowed them to sustain larger and larger populations. This was both a blessing and a curse. Human populations grew so radically and rapidly that no complex agricultural society could ever again sustain itself if it returned to hunting and gathering. Agriculture was here to stay. The main ideas, Chapter 3. 10,000 years ago, sapiens began focusing on domesticating plants and animals. The transition to agriculture worsened sapiens' lifestyles and health in many ways. However, farming allowed humans to sustain larger communities and set the stage for sapiens to build complex social systems. Chapter 4. Creating empires, 5,000 years ago. Sapiens. By domesticating wheat and other sources of food, sapiens could now sustain larger and larger populations. This population boom led to the rise of cities, kingdoms, and eventually empires. But with larger and more complex societies came new problems for sapiens to solve. In cities of thousands, gossip could no longer track every social relationship, losing its power to enforce social norms. And with food readily available, people could specialize in other trades rather than forage. This created economies too complex for simple bartering. Sapiens needed to find ways to organize these growing societies. In 3000 BC, we invented money to standardize markets. Writing was invented to record and pass down everything from transactions and military inventory to calendars of local festivals. And to maintain political, social, and economic order, we created laws and hierarchies of power. For example, the Code of Hammurabi, composed circa 1776 BC, established laws for crime, property, family, and commerce throughout the Babylonian Empire. Sapiens enforced these laws by imbuing them with divine power. King Hammurabi claimed that his authority was appointed by the gods. Indeed, Harari identifies religion as the third great unifier of humankind, alongside money and empires. This was especially true of universal and missionary religions like Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. In the 1st century AD, hardly anyone believed in a single, supreme God. By the end of the first millennium AD, monotheists were the majority population in Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. These religions standardized values and behaviors across the globe by introducing a universal superhuman order that is always and everywhere. By 200 BC, most humans lived in an empire, a political order governing over many distinct cultures, territories, and people. This diversity enriched us. Empires produced works of high art, cultural wonders, and important works of philosophy. But they were also engines of destruction and exploitation. The standard imperial toolkit included wars, enslavement, deportation, and genocide. Harari shares many examples of empires creating beauty on the backs of the oppressed. For instance, the Taj Mahal is one of the new 7 wonders of the world. But this icon of Muslim art could not have been built without the exploitation of Indian subjects in the Mughal Empire. Similarly, the Habsburg Empire financed Mozart's masterpieces with the money it made from its Slavic, Hungarian, and Romanian-speaking provinces. Our imperial legacies are complicated. Empires have destroyed cultures and created new ones. They have unified populations but made enemies and slaves of others. Harari believes that future sapiens will exist in empires too, but that this future empire will be a global one. Rather than be ruled by one state or group, future sapiens will be governed by a global culture with commonly held ideas about justice, economics, and environment. The main ideas, Chapter 4. As populations grew, sapiens had to develop ways to organize and maintain empires. This led to the invention or adoption of money, empires, and universal religion. We are now moving towards a global empire, governed by international standards and focused on solving global problems. Chapter 5. Ignorance and Innovation, 500 years ago. Until 1500 AD, the lives and brains of sapiens changed slowly. Language, complex social living, and farming took hold over tens of thousands of years. But about 500 years ago, sapiens experienced a mindset shift that would ignite innovation on a rapid scale. We discovered our own ignorance. What's more, Harari argues, we started believing that learning new things could improve our lives. In other words, we began to believe in progress. Once we admitted our ignorance, we began looking for ways to grow our knowledge, which included investing resources into scientific research. Soon, sapiens saw an explosion of power and growth. For most of human history, we knew nothing about 99.99% of organisms on the planet. Today we engineer bacteria for medicine and biofuel. In 1500 AD, no human had circumnavigated the Earth, let alone taken to the sky, which was reserved for birds, angels, and deities. In 1969, we landed on the Moon. In countless other ways, our world today looks very different from the one we inhabited 500 years ago. This modern period of research, discovery, and innovation is known as the scientific revolution. Modern science diverges from earlier traditions of knowledge, such as philosophy, in 3 critical ways. First, it not only admits ignorance, we don't know the answer, it also assumes falsifiability, things we think we know can be proven wrong later. This assumption has made scientists inquisitive, open-minded, and able to flexibly pivot when theories are proven wrong. The second unique principle of modern science is its emphasis on observation and mathematics. To gain new knowledge, scientists do not rely on intuition or anecdotal evidence. Instead, they gather observations, data, and use math to connect these observations into comprehensive theories. Third, once observations become theories, modern science uses them to transform tools and industries. To see the scientific revolution in action, consider the birth of actuarial science, which is pivotal to today's insurance business. In 1744, 2 clergymen, Alexander Webster and Robert Wallace, wanted to set up an insurance fund to support widows and orphans of Scottish ministers. These men didn't know how many ministers would die each year, the size of their families, or how long their families would need support. Rather than praying for an answer or acting on intuition, Webster and Wallace practiced modern science. First, they acknowledged ignorance and contacted a mathematics professor about their problem. Then, all three of them collected data. From these observations, they estimated that 27 ministers would die each year, and 23 of these would leave families behind. Finally, Webster and Wallace used these estimates to calculate how much money ministers would have to pay to join their fund. Their result was incredibly accurate. By 1765, just one less than the prediction. Today, their Scottish Widows Fund is one of the most successful insurance and pension companies in the world. Modern science has propelled many such advances, leaving Sapiens on the verge of becoming a god, capable of creation and destruction. What does this mean for the future of Sapiens? We'll explore this next. The main ideas, Chapter 5. 500 years ago, Sapiens turned to scientific methods in order to learn and innovate. The scientific method involves acknowledging one's own ignorance and the power of data to inform theories. By testing and applying our theories, humans have revolutionized technologies and industries. Chapter 6. Our present and future. The scientific revolution set Sapiens on a quest for knowledge and discovery. But these goals soon became entwined with the desire to amass power and wealth. This is because the European empires that fostered science and discovery were also interested in conquest. European explorers soon conquered the indigenous people of the Americas and established mines and plantations that exploited the resources of these continents. And as novel products like sugar, tobacco, and cotton became popular in Europe, a massive export economy was established. The African slave trade was established to cut down on labor costs. Between the 16th and 19th centuries AD, about 10 million enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas. As Europeans chased profits and grew empires, some twisted science to justify their actions. They made false claims that Europeans were a superior race, with a duty to lay the foundations of culture throughout the world. Pernicious ideas like these furthered systems of inequality, motivated genocides, and culminated in civil and world wars. By the 20th century, mass movements had developed in favor of equality and human rights. And today, Harari says, we're seeing a growing global belief that safeguarding human rights and the interests of the human species should be the guiding light of politics. This safeguarding of interests extends to rethinking our relationship with our planet. Since the 19th century, human ingenuity, backed by science and driven by capitalism, has created ways to convert energy and mass-produce goods. This industrial revolution has largely freed us from limits imposed by nature. But in molding the world to fit our needs, we have destroyed habitats and entire species. Our pressing goals now will be to respond to the damage we have done over the past several centuries, both to people and to our environment. A third priority for present and future sapiens is the extension and creation of life. Today's humans design bionic limbs and perform surgery on the brain. And the pace of medical and technological innovation keeps getting faster. Sapiens are now at a stage of bypassing the natural rules of biology and evolution entirely, Harari says. For instance, in 2000, scientists combined genes from a rabbit and a jellyfish to create Albert, a green and fluorescent rabbit. Where else might intelligent design append our lives as we know it? Already, we are poised to fundamentally alter and even engineer our consciousness and genes. Some serious scholars believe we may see immortal humans who will not die from natural causes, by 2050. But Harari concludes by saying that these changes could call the very term human into question. Over the past 70,000 years, sapiens have gone from an insignificant species to one that is beginning to break the laws of nature. We are now on the verge of assuming powers that will change our fundamental role as humans. And this could mean the end of Homo sapiens altogether. The main ideas, Chapter 6. Our future will likely be dominated by questions around human rights, eternal life, and environmental protection. Human ingenuity and greed has led to both revolutions in industry and human oppression. In bypassing laws of biology and transforming our minds and bodies, we may produce a new human species.